What's up, guys? Henry Higuita here with another episode of Across the Pitch, where usually we have our previews in the bag, but this time it's in the net. It's in the net. That's right, Atlanta United travels this weekend to face DC United, and my guest really needs no introduction. The legendary voice of DC United, Dave Johnson. Dave, it's an honor to have you on.
Well, listen, it's a pleasure to be on. And, I've been, even involved before the start of this league. It's especially a pleasure to be on with what you're doing in Atlanta and the fan culture there and the crowds and the support. And it is just so, it's just so good for our league. And, this is a league that I think that people need to appreciate. We started in 1996, but there was a period of time, 2000, 2001, we weren't sure which way it was going. And franchises like Toronto, certainly Atlanta, and I go down the list have helped really change the trajectory of this of Major League Soccer to the point where we're on the world stage in terms of people are saying, well, one day, when is MLS going to compete for some of the young stars in the Premier League? And these are thoughts that, in my lifetime, I never thought I'd even hear. And part of it is through the commitment of owners like you have in Atlanta, and just the great fan support in Atlanta. And I've witnessed it firsthand, and it's always a lot of fun to go down there. And my good friend Garth Lagerway, who was one of my former broadcast partners, is I have very faith in Garth, and I wish good things ahead for Atlanta. Not this weekend for DC United. Both teams really need something this Saturday.
A battle of two teams in a pretty similar spot in the standings. DC, I believe, 13th, and Atlanta 14th in the East. Both of them need 3 points. But before we get into the actual game, I'm curious, your call, it's in the net. It's trademark for you. But where did it start? Where did that originate from?
Well, it actually started in this. Again, dates me for how long I've been doing this. This goes back to the late '80s, '89, in that period when I was actually doing indoor soccer with a club called the Baltimore Blast. And at that time, and the Baltimore Blast still exists in what's known as the Major Arena Soccer League, but the Major Indoor Soccer League had a period of time from 1978 to 1992 where they were getting solid crowds in Baltimore and St. Louis and Cleveland. The great sports writer Frank DeFord even predicted that it would be the fourth major sport in the United States. His assertion was it would supplant hockey because you could see the goal, every goal. Whereas, and I love hockey. Don't get me wrong. This is not about a hockey debate, but it seemed like a made-for-television event as we were coming of age, where televised sports really in the 1980s was what it was all about. So this seemed like the version of soccer that was perfect for the television. There was four quarters, there was timeouts, et cetera, et cetera. So it really started back when I was doing the Baltimore Blast, and it just kind of hung on. I mean, the goal in indoor, there's more goals, but certainly in soccer, it was a passionate moment, and I try to bring that passion to it.
Now you have decades worth of it's in the net, but which one is your favorite?
Well, I did have the honor, which I never thought I would, of calling a Wayne Rooney goal. And again, it talks about where we are as a Major League Soccer franchise, and we are as a league. It was not the famous goal, and my good friend John Paul, our camera, called that where he tracks back and wins the ball and serves it up for Luciano Acosta. I wish I could have called that one. I called a 75-yard goal from him, and why that was so special is I watched him, and this is the way great players are. They are constant. They're very cerebral. They're constantly thinking one or two plays in advance. So he could tell where the goalkeeper was playing off his line, but there's no way, there's no script that says he's going to get the ball. But he's already prepared for, well, he did get the ball. and he just turns and shoots because he had already planned it out in his mind that if he got it in that position, he sees where the goalkeeper is, and he scores. There's a Lewis Neal, not a player of that filled up the DC United record books, but he had a special time here in DC United in Washington. I still remember his clinching goal when we got back to the playoffs in 2012, and that was significant because we were to some extent embarrassed by success, or an embarrassment of riches, as that phrase goes. We had three titles out of the first 4 years, a title in 2004, and still going strong in 2007, and then all of a sudden, really from that period until we made the playoffs, I just remember that feeling of relief. It felt like we were back where we belong, it's hard when you so many, and Jaime Moreno, Marco Echeverri. We had so many greats, and um, some of the goals that Echeverri created with his magic left foot, I also cherish as well.
Good blast from the past there. Let's move back into the present. Let's talk about DC United's transfer business. One of the more productive newcomers that DC United has, and I think deserves a spotlight, is Joao Peglo. 2 goals and 2 assists so far this season. Just tell me a little bit about what he brings and how he uh, fits into this DC team.
Well, and we need him on the field healthy, and he's had some injury problems because he is that type of player that can unlock a defense because he can take guys on the flank and 1v1 and attack and unsettle defenses. And I think if we had a player who transferred to Germany, Kevin Paredes, you need those kind of creative, inventive, bold players. And frankly, we do need him to be healthy, and that's going to be critical for. That's the thing about Major League Soccer for both of our teams right now. And certainly Seattle proved it the year they won the MLS Cup, where they were in last place, probably in July, and next thing you know, they get on a run. So that's just not just PR spin. It's the nature, of this league, and I've seen it, since day one. It's not a league like the Premier League where they say, "Well, if you're in first place at Christmas, it's almost done." So, he will be essential because right now what DC United needs is inventive, creative players because it's just not getting a lot of quality chances in the attacking third.
Now, taking a look at the other side of things, we were introduced to our new sporting director, Chris Henderson, with a deal that he worked to bring Mateusz Klich to Atlanta while DC retained his DP tag. Now, I mean, this looked to me like an outrageous trade at the moment. Why was that, I guess, a good move for DC to let Mateusz Klich go to Atlanta and still have him as one of their DPs?
It's there's so many roster rules in MLS that DP is a fairly easily understandable one, but the only thing that I it seems to be apparent is he didn't fit into the way that Troy Lesane envisioned um, the team playing, and that's the only thing I can speculate on because he's a quality player. Um, so yeah, I don't have a real in depth answer on that, but it was a move that was made.
That's fair. And also, I mean, just looking at the outgoings, you have a lot of, I want to say, experience. I mean, Pedro Santos, Dahome, Bono, Knaus. You have a lot of those guys that just kind of all moved out all at once, and you bring in fairly younger players. What is behind this whole shift in DC United?
Well, I think it may be cliche, but and you see this in all sports. Often when is a coaching change, and the reality is, Troy Lesane took over as head coach, fairly late in the process, leading into to 24, um, and Ali Mackay for that matter, the sporting director. So I think this is a common occurrence where, um, and it's no disrespect or diminishment to any of the players that are on the list that were let go. Um, it just every coach, sporting director, they have a vision of who fits the way they want to play, and I think that leads to a lot of the transfers. I mean, I look at that list right down. I mean, some are explainable that Matai, Akinboni. I mean, we knew he was probably going to be short term because he was going to be of a quality that would fetch a large transfer fee, and as a club, you don't want to hold guys back, and I think that's pretty standard in Major League Soccer when there's a chance to move on. Ted Pietro, we developed. Um, you write down. Russell Canal's kind of an interesting or difficult situation because he had some health problems. But certainly Mateusz Klich is the headline there from a designated player standpoint and a quality standpoint. But I think it sports and roster construction and why one player works. And this goes for I do NBA basketball. This goes for every sport. It's fit and opportunity. It doesn't mean that Mateusz Klich has lost something or player X has lost something. It just means for whatever reason they don't fit with that team.
Before we move on, are there any others on either side of this list that you would like to highlight or go through in more detail?
I think Christian Fletcher is a guy that's injured, but he spent some time at Nottingham Forest, and just what we were talking about with Jao Pegalo. That when we found out he tore his ACL, to me that's a big blow. We need creative, inventive players, um, and he's going to be out for some time. And Kim Jun Hong is a goalkeeper that I know we're very high on, and I think he's a very young player, and I think he still has he's not number one goalkeeper now. I don't know if you want to say he lost his job, but Luis Barraza now is in that role, and um, but I think he does have a future in Washington.
Let's talk about the season for DC so far. Probably not going according to plan. They're 12th in the East with 18 points and a 4-10-6 record. Dave, why is the team struggling so much this season?
Well, it's the short answer is a failure to be consistent. Now, why that is, that's a more involved discussion. They beat an FC Cincinnati on the road. That's a big win under any description. But then, a week later, at home, Chicago pretty much has its way with DC United. So, um, I think that at this point, um, the focus they've had a couple of big losses. Chicago was one of them. San Jose, a 6-1 loss. Orlando, a 4-1 loss. It seems like they DC United is structurally got it right or been able to mitigate situations like I just described. And so obviously, if you're not leaking goals to that extent, that puts you in a competitive situation. But I don't think um, they have been as effective as they need to be and with enough bite in the attacking third. We have the Golden Boot winner, yes, Christian Benteke. Now he missed some games, but it cannot be just about if you don't have Christian Benteke, then you're totally lost. So um, I think right now, in a situation where you need 3 points, at home. There's got to be some attacking swagger, and right now, quite frankly, and I'm not breaking any news here, but we certainly didn't see it last week against Nashville. Now you can say, well, Nashville didn't have anything much. They didn't, but we didn't either. DC didn't either, and that's a home game for DC. When Nashville played midweek, DC did not. Disappointing. There's no two ways around it. DC United would have been a playoff team last year, but inexplicably they had a very poor home record. Well, here we go again. It's another poor home record. I think we figured out the math, um, and that was before last week. The DC United needed 23 out of a possible 45 to make the playoffs. That's just based on the cutoff line from last year. So now we're looking at 23 out of 42. The narrative of, well, there's still time, is starting to run short.
And again, Atlanta in a very similar position, uh, just a few points below, actually 1 point below DC. And it's a team that I think has some of the similar struggles that you mentioned, the lack of bite. Ronnie Dyla called the team soft in both boxes. And I mean, that's what they've been. And they've given up some strange goals this season. Just handing them out, just like passing it to an opponent in front of goal, and it makes no sense. And so I'm curious about this game, what we're going to see from these two sides, if it's going to be just kind of I guess on our show we call it the drunk uncle game, because it's two teams that are, it's weird, like they're not doing great, and so we don't know what to expect.
Well, I mean, again, more is expected of Atlanta on paper, and I think you could make the same argument with DC United. We actually got off to a pretty good start first 4 weeks, but um, yeah, and again, Christian Benteke is an elite player, and I think when you look at teams and you've got elite players, there's an expectation more. It's some people, um, when they talk about DC, look, when things are not going well with any team around the world, fans right away say, well, you got to go buy this, this, and this. Well, that's not going to happen, because we're the transfer window is not there yet, and you can't wait for that and hope for that. Um, but again, DC United is a roster that has international players on it. This is not a roster void of talent or even void of salary. So, um, it's got to be figured out on the field. It has to be, um, they the attack is, they cannot be predictable to play against, and I believe that. And again, I don't think sharing state secrets, but when you look at DC United and the chances they've created, or um, obviously other teams seem to be figuring them out defensively and limiting the real opportunity. And I think we were talking about this on our podcast that Bruce Murray and I do, called First 11. And call it First 11 because we want to make it 11 minutes or less, because we're not that smart. We can't talk that long. So, but the crosses have to be quick. It's little things. This is a game of fine margin. So the crosses have to be delivered quicker. The anticipation by the players have to be uh, at a higher pace, and it's not been. It's certainly the last 2 weeks. At Real Salt Lake and obviously you go the previous week against Chicago. So um, they become too predictable, and they need to change that up.
Let's see how unpredictable they can be in this game. But you predicted the 11. Here is that predicted 11. Dave, walk us through this lineup and highlight some of the key players we need to look out for.
Well, I mean, I will say Luis Barraza, and this is the other thing, keeps making saves that are saving games. And when you have a goalkeeper that makes those type of saves in a game, I mean, he made a point blank save on Sam Surridge the other week, last week against Nashville. You want to see the goalkeeper rewarded at the other end, and that's not happening right now. But he has really come in and solidified that position. Kai Rolls is one of the international players I was talking about. Obviously you have Benteke up there, but this is Benteke can hold the ball and he can be a target like really nobody else. I mean, he is. They subscribe to some stats service, and this was last year. And I don't know if it's changed, but he was number one in the world in aerial duels. Not number one in MLS. Not number one out of five North American league. The world. Um, so he is a special player. So what I'd like to see Saturday is that he gets the proper support. I predicted this lineup based on Kojima is an interesting player because his work rate is tremendous. His the way he thinks the game. Um, he literally writes to players all over the world, pen pals, if you will, and he gets responses and he wants feedback. He's the type of guy that's the first at the training session, cannot get enough film. Um, so I think we still need to see uh, the best, are still going to see the best from him. So there's some potential in this team to uh, to be more dangerous on attack, but they just have not shown it. They can attack successfully from the wing. David Schnegg and Connor Antley are the wing backs right now. Antley, usually in that position, is Aaron Herrera. Now, he was busy with Guatemala at the Gold Cup. But, Bruce Murray, my partner and former U.S. Um, soccer all-time leading goal scorer, has said sometimes he thinks Schnegg and Guatemala and Herrera make up the best, wingback tandem in Major League Soccer. So that's what I'm saying. There's a belief uh, within the squad they should be better than they are, and I'm probably it's probably a lot of what's going on right now in Atlanta. Um, and this is what makes Major League Soccer is a great league because of it just has to be settled on the field. There's not I always give the example in 2010, Colorado and FC Dallas played for MLS Cup. Were they the two best teams that year? I don't necessarily think so, but they somehow navigated to MLS Cup. So, this is a league because of its structure. Uh, you need to be playing the way you want to play right now as we turn the page on July. Now we're really into the stretch run toward the season, and it's gonna happen really quickly, I believe. Who is Atlanta going to be a serious contender? And look out, here they come. Is DC United going to be a serious contender, or uh, within the next month? Will we already be looking at 2026? I think it's that fragile right now, which amplifies the importance of Saturday's game.
Now, I wanted to spotlight one of the players in the lineup, Garrison Tubbs. He was an Atlanta United homegrown for all of, I think, like a couple days until he was traded to DC. Uh, and our resident expert on homegrown players, Gray, wants to know how Garrison is doing this season.
He's a great story, and I'll tell you why. He was actually, we do not have. We're the only team right now, and it's going to change. But we do not have an MLS Next Pro team, and so why that's significant. We loaned him to Loudoun United, so it's not as simple as you can put MLS Next Pro players on your team, Atlanta 2, for example, but you can bring them back up. Well, we can't just do that. Loudoun United is a separate entity. It's in the United Soccer League, and there's a whole loan process. Certainly, that was disappointing for him, but he came back. He scored in our Open Cup run. Um, and I really think, and Bruce and I talked about this even last year, and this is not easy when you all of a sudden, because he gets thrown into situations because um, of injury typically, and he's been more than solid, and that's evidenced by he's starting.
Certainly good to see some of our academy products and our homegrown succeeding outside of Atlanta. Talk to me about the play style of this team. How can we expect to see this team play?
Well, I mean, for it to be successful, it has to, stretch the defense. It has to, as I said, use the wing backs, David Schnee in this case, Connor Antley. Um, but, if for them to truly be effective, it can't just be, hit and hope to Christian Benteke. Um, I think they have, and it bears out in terms of what they've been done better defensively. Boris Enel or Matty Peltola, or if it's Brandon Cervania, those are quality defensive midfielders that can both you know disrupt and also delight because Enel scored a goal this year. Peltola, we're still waiting for him to score his first goal, but they can be critical parts of that midfield. We're going to miss this week through suspension Gabriel Pirani, which I still think we've not seen. He's from Brazil, a special Brazilian talent in my mind, and he possesses what DC United has not shown enough of in stretches that um, to unlock defenses, you need players that are going to go at people, and 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 that's where DC United is right now in terms of. I think you're going to see a sense of urgency, or you should on Saturday, and um, and that means players need to have the freedom to express and say, what, there's no tomorrow necessarily. We have got to, if we're going to try it, we're going to try it now, because we can talk about all the and they're true. You get the structure or this or that right, but you're not getting points. And this team needs points. It needs points at home, especially. I mean, the fan base, needless to say, was not happy. The Nashville game, there was just nothing there, and so. And it's the same all around the league. Yes, road games are important too, but you want to get your fan base really behind you. And right now, that's a little tenuous with DC United.
Points needed by DC and points needed by Atlanta. It is a 6-pointer for both of these teams, a 6-point scrap. Uh, but we've also gotten to the part of the show where we talk about score predictions. And so, Dave, we do a score prediction challenge. We have all the guests on this show competing as a team with against us, the staff of Scarves and Spikes. And so far, you guys are in 4th out of 7. So not that bad, but y'all have dropped. Y'all were in the lead at first, and y'all have kind of dropped. So you need to get the points for your team. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's a common theme up here in DC.
So how do you think this game ends?
I do think I'm just going to throw out 3-2. I know it sounds crazy, but I just think I'm going to say 3-2 DC. That's not to be um, jingoistic or a hometown favorite, but I gotta believe that it's going to be an open game. I don't see a point to being for anybody to be cautious at this point, and so um, DC is going to show what they can do. It's not going to be a 1-0 result, and I think the same for Atlanta. Look, Atlanta's got there's quality there, and David Schnegg was talking about that in the press conference. There's speed that they need to be concerned with. Um, I think it's going to be 3-2. I'm gonna go out there, and I'll put a DC United win.
Before we get out of here, where can people follow you on socials or find your work?
At Dave J Sports, you can follow me on social, um, and that's probably the best place. Or you can even email me at the best email. I have a minor league soccer team that I'm part owner of, David@AnnapolisBlues.com. I love connecting with people. By the way, I I I made friends with some of the Fulham in the South folks that are great Atlanta United supporters, and it was a guy who reached out to me a few years ago and said that I was too much of a homer on the broadcast and he didn't like my broadcast. And I said, well, no, I don't think that's necessarily the case, but I appreciate your passion and et cetera. And you know what? We became good friends, and that's what it's all about. Where you connect people, and I think my friend Edgar from the LA Galaxy. I mean, again, people have to understand when I say when Major League Soccer, but I was there in the beginning in 1990s. We didn't know if this league were going to last. So I appreciate every person and every supporter that shows passion, that does like you do and takes the time to inform people, engage people. I mean, it's a lot of work you put in to do. And I try to subscribe to every newsletter. There's a and you probably do what is it called, the Five Stripe Final that comes out, talks about
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, these are things that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you didn't think would ever happen, and it is. And it's people talking and debating, and you know what? It's okay if we don't agree, but we love this game, and I'm just so thankful that Atlanta United, and I want Atlanta United to continue to succeed because Arthur Blank has shown such a great commitment to soccer, and boy, the joy they've brought the league. But I was rooting when you were hosting the MLS Cup and won it, and believe me, I was rooting for Atlanta because, and again, the history of soccer in Atlanta. I remember I grew up in the '70s, and Atlanta Chiefs didn't really draw fans back then, but now Atlanta's a great soccer city. Yeah, and it's a terrible place to get from the airport to downtown, but other than that, it's a great city.
Yeah, that it is, and it's certainly a soccer city. And again, here with Atlanta United, we've had a few years of not great soccer, but having that community is absolutely everything, and having the people that are involved that make the Atlanta United community what it is, that is something truly, truly special. And so I'm very grateful that we have that, and we have so many amazing people in and around this team that make it a joyful experience to be a part of. Well, that's about all we have for this episode. Please do make sure to check out the website, scarvesandspikes.com, for news, opinion, analysis, features all sorts of articles about Atlanta United and soccer in the South, like the Club World Cup, which is currently going on. And there is a game there Saturday between PSG and Bayern Munich that you do not want to miss. Be sure to check out the shop for some really cool merch. We have hats, we have t-shirts, we have even beer glasses, tons of stuff for you to get and support an independent news outlet such as us. Another way to support us is by joining the Patreon for $1.17 a month. You get access to exclusive interview audio, content like our Unfiltered series, our Patreon mailbags, and the Discord, where we have tons of really cool conversations about not just Atlanta United, but other stuff. We talk about food. We talk about video games. We talk about soccer outside of Atlanta United. So much stuff going on there, and we can't wait to have you guys there. That's going to do it for us. Dave, thank you so much for hopping on, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I got to get the Scarves and Spikes. You had me a beer glass, so I got to buy a beer glass. Thank you. Anytime,
Absolutely.
anytime.